Welcome to the third in a series of ESPN adventures under sail, 80 degrees north. More than 800 years after Viking sailors first sighted and named the Svalbard archipelago, a crew of 8 adventurers aboard a 62-footer set out to sail these same icy waters. Svalbard means the cold coast. It is a group of 5 islands 600 miles north of Norway, just 600 miles from the North Pole. It is mysterious, exotic land, most of which is inaccessible except by boat. Hidden by the frigid darkness of polar night 7 months every year, in the midnight sun of summer, Svalbard is as strikingly beautiful as it is cold and barren. Join the crew of Oystercatcher 24 as they attempt to reach 80 degrees north, expedition to the Arctic. In 1993, aboard the vessel Pelagic, Gary Jobson led ESPN's first polar sailing expedition to one of the most rugged headlands in the world, Cape Horn, a point long feared by mariners. Gales batter this 1,500-foot peak 1 day out of every 4, year-round. Southerly winds are cold and fierce enough to make sailors batten down. In 1996, Jobson and crew went further south, sailing to the Antarctic, the frozen continent. The infamous Drake Passage, a funnel for polar winds, led to this wonderland covered by an ice cap 13,000 feet thick. Penguins greeted them. The late Alex Lowe, ice climber extraordinaire, recorded a personal first by scaling an iceberg above 28-degree water. This past spring, the ESPN sailors left New York for Oslo, where they would fly to Longyearbyen on the island of Spitsbergen, Svalbard, part of Norway. 39 other countries participate by treaty in recreation, commerce, and land ownership. The team boarded the 62-footer they hoped would take them to 80 degrees north, nearly 300 miles away. And they got their first look at a sparkling array of glaciers, fjords, and thousands of 1,500-foot snow-covered pointy mountains that give Spitsbergen its name.
Spitsbergen has been called the last place on Earth. Just 2 years ago, it was a cold dream to the north for our ESPN sailing team. But here we are aboard a 62-foot yacht, Oystercatcher 24, on our way to exploring this archipelago. Even in summer, the Arctic is frigid and foreboding. Our goal, to reach 80 degrees north latitude under sail. So welcome to the land of the midnight sun, where there are more polar bears than people.
Oystercatcher 24 is the first 62-footer produced by Oyster Marine in England. On board is the company's president, Richard Matthews, who races 12 meters in his spare time.
It's a hostile environment as far as man is concerned, and compared to other places in the world, we'd have to go some to mess this place up. It's a big commitment coming up here with a sailboat. We're a long way from home here. We had to cross the Arctic Sea, 600 miles of very open and exposed water. It's not something that you'd want to take on lightly.
The boat's captain is Steve Davies, who has sailed his own boat around the world for the past 2 years.
You can sit outside on the deck and everyone else is down below and it's absolutely quiet, there's nothing. And you look around you and you know there's nothing for miles.
Arne Kristoffersen, a coal miner turned wilderness pro, is our guide. He brings the Norwegian perspective to the 24-hour daylight.
You don't have time for sleep because when it's sun is shining 24 hours a day, you don't have to sleep.
Claire Davies, Steve's wife and shipmate, writes for magazines about their circumnavigation.
We've never been this far north. I mean, this for us was just such a huge challenge, such an opportunity.
Danette Wilkinson is Richard's shipmate and an enthusiastic student of the Arctic.
It's one of those places that I think now you've seen, you'll never ever forget. It will be permanently etched in your mind.
Jack King is a veteran sailor and a good shot. He was drafted as one of the polar bear vigilantes.
This is not a tourist place. This is a place to go and appreciate nature and the environment itself.
Well said. Once the anchor is away and the sails fill, this team will not encounter another vessel in 12 days of sailing. But there are 165 varieties of birds to keep them company, and all those mountains.
It's beautiful. The temperature's about 40 degrees out. The sun's shining, blowing 25 miles an hour, straight to where we want to go. Our destination is about 20 miles, sailing 265 or roughly due west. Good day to get underway.
But obviously we looked into the weather and the conditions we'd be looking at, got some advice from people that have been up here, and so we have a few other bits of equipment, for example the heating we uprated, we got some extra line in so we could tie ashore as and when necessary. So really they were the two main points, but that's about it really. The boat was, you know, pretty much ready to go everywhere.
80 Degrees North is presented by Rolex, sponsor of U.S. Sailing and the official timepiece of the U.S. Sailing team. And by Transderm Scope, the nausea prevention patch. In spring, the mountains near Longyearbyen lose their snow cover. Eider ducks nest underfoot. The main street comes alive. This town of 1,400 souls was founded by American John Longyear, who began a coal mining operation here in 1906. Longyearbyen is base anchorage for the ESPN crew.
Well, we've been here in Longyearbyen and we've had some pretty good weather. The plan to sail out the harbor and all the way up to the north. It's about 240 miles to get to 80 degrees north latitude at Muffin Island. The big question right now is, what about the weather?
Okay, we've been enjoying this high for the last few days. We've now got this low coming through, which will be giving us good favourable winds to head up to north.
Of course, the winds are one thing. The real question in this part of the world is, what about the ice?
We've got open water all the way up to the corner, and then some open drift ice up to Muffin Island, and I don't think that's going to be a problem for us, so I think it looks pretty good.
We get underway at 5 p.m., an unusual hour for departure in strange waters, but dark of night isn't a factor. Big Fulmars, members of the Petrol family, cruise alongside. We're comfortable on deck with that incessant sun helping keep us warm.
I am completely timeless. You could tell me now that it was 8 in the morning, 8 in the evening, 2 o'clock in the morning. I have no idea at all, without looking at my watch, what the time is.
Total daylight like this, 24 hours a day, if you can survive that, most of the people can survive that, then you can also survive total darkness.
It helps if you were born in the land of the midnight sun. The idea of total darkness for 4 months horrifies our crew of Southerners.
We want to think that the people are depressed when it's total dark, but people are actually getting depressed when the light returns. I don't know why, but it is so.
A little after 11 at night here, still daylight even though we've got a lot of overcast. Heading north, Oyster Catcher is a big boat, 62 feet, and it's heavy, but with 24 knots over our shoulder now, I'm able to line up these waves and get almost a knot of surge out of it, so it's kind of nice.
The crew quickly adapts to the rhythm of the cruise. One of the busiest is Claire, who can do it all, from steering to managing meals for 8. She says she might never put her feet on dry land again.
I like to cram everything in. At every opportunity, I'll stick my head up and make sure I see what's going on. I don't want to miss a thing. Look at those clouds on the horizon there, like fingers pointing to where we're going. It's kind of eerie though, isn't it? All the dark and light and the reflection of the snow. We're about to reach the longest day, but on the horizon, it almost looks like a sunset. It really is quite spectacular here.
Spectacular, but the crew has been advised that the weather will change faster than one can blink an eye.
You know, out here in the Gulf right now, I think we've got every kind of weather imaginable. If we look off to my right here, you can see clear skies, little wistful clouds over the mountains. You've got a little rain shower coming. But looking ahead here, it's quite dark.
In moments, the wind and the seas build in advance of an approaching gale from astern.
As it is now with the wind and waves getting up, it's very important that any of us go forward that we wear one of these. So this is a combined harness and life jacket and goes on simply like that and then clips on at the front like that. Then you have 2 fixing points which can be fixed to any point on the boat. For example, if you're in the cockpit down here, attach it onto the yellow jackstay like that and walk along the boat.
Quarter to 2, June 21st, Midsummer's Day here in the North Country. A little bit of rain. We saw a few snowflakes come down. What a great night, or is it day, to be out here sailing at 79 degrees north latitude. But we're by the lee and quickly closing the land. It's time to jibe. Next part.
Let's get away from this lee shore.
Trim the jib on the stay still on the leeward side. With the wind gusting above 40 knots across the deck, it's time to reef. Our director, Roger Vaughn, works on the lee side. It's blowing harder all the time. We decide to strike the main. This is a big rig, 80 feet off the deck. Richard is a racing man, don't forget. So we sail under jib as we wrestle the main into submission. A tough job with so much wind astern.
As you say, I'm ex-army officer, so I spent quite a lot of time taking soldiers to places not quite like this, but up in the Welsh mountains and places like that. So you get a good idea what it's going to be like and what the preparations you need to make and to make sure that you're ready for everything.
Finally, the mainsail yields. Kind of scary when the wind speed is higher than the temperature. Temperature about 33, 34, wind speed about 38 to 42. So we're going to look to get around the point. It's about 4 miles away. We're going to jive here in just a minute with just the staysail up. And then when we're around the corner under the lee of these big mountains, we'll look for a refuge to take a rest. Whose idea was to come up here anyway?
Never try to throw a potato chip.
I was confident in the boat and I knew that she'd be fine. So, and provided we got the ice right, there's no reason why we couldn't come up here like anywhere else.
There you go. Seas are big, but I feel good. I got my little patch on. See that behind my ear? Thing's working. Thank goodness. You think better when you feel better. Spice of life. So we have our first gale and discover the comforting fact that Spitsbergen's coast is lined with deep, cozy fjords that offer great protection from the elements. The glacier behind me is a slow-moving river of ice. It takes over 1,000 years to carve out a valley. This spring melt does the same thing in the sand in a matter of weeks. Either way, you call it erosion. At the back of most fjords, there's a glacier that carved the fjord before it receded. It was only a matter of time before Arna and I launched kayaks to have a close look at the face of a glacier called a snout. 60% of Svalbard is covered with these magnificent moving rivers of ice. Coming face to face with them is like being in a time warp. This time of year, they rumble and groan as the ice melts and shifts. These leaning towers look ready to collapse or calve into the sea, but no such luck this day. It was Danette who went into the sea. Water temperature 42 degrees.
Well, you know, she's like swimming wherever we go, and she just doesn't seem to be affected by cold water. We were up duck hunting on Wolf Island in the St. Lawrence Seaway last October, and while we were out treading across the ice to look for duck, she was having a swim. Crazy.
She didn't make the slightest fuss, just plunged right in. Whoa.
The sea today looks Caribbean blue, and the sky is the most incredible colour. Oh, it's just unbelievable. The interesting thing is you can almost imagine some of these sites without snow.
But there is snow, Danette, and this isn't the Caribbean. She said it was all about mental attitude, and she's unruffled to the end.
The expression, the tip of the iceberg, is well-founded. The iceberg you see is not what you get. 90% of an iceberg is underwater. Icebergs are born of glaciers and ice sheets. The Antarctic produces enormous bergs from its ice cap. Smaller Arctic bergs are striking because of their color, resulting from glacial compression. This is a large berg for the Arctic.
It was fascinating, Claire, to look at this iceberg. It's kind of weathered, and you can see all the old water lines. This thing has just been spinning around here, probably a couple years old.
It's incredible. And look at the effect of the pressure on the berg and the intense blue. So unlike the ice that we saw back on the shore.
This berg is home to a flock of kittiwakes.
And how they could sit there on a 45-degree ice slope, that's home to them. And they've adapted to the environment here.
You feel slightly humbled, actually, because you feel your boat is quite large till you come alongside something like that. And I'm quite certain if we disappeared round the back of it, you wouldn't be able to see the mast at all.
There are some mammoth glaciers in this area. Each one, of course, has a name on the chart. The ice in them is anywhere from 700 to 1,200 years old.
The birds are great companions. The big fulmars fly with Olympic grace, swooping from astern, gliding alongside, then diving to soar among the wave tops. The choreography of the turns is hypnotic as these gymnastic flyers delicately pluck tiny morsels of food off the surface. When a flock of them start feeding at once, the effect is dizzying. The stocky ptarmigan is a rare bird, and everyone's favorite is the little guillemot, a great diver.
The guillemots are lovely, and they've got bright red inside their mouths and these bright red feet, and they're super to watch on the water.
They put so much effort into flying, and they really have to put a huge amount into getting up off the water.
Another flock of elusive kittiwakes gathers near the snout of a glacier. The voyage to 80 degrees north will continue after this. Welcome back to 80 degrees north under sail. As Oystercatcher 24 reels off miles to the north, movement ashore catches the crew's eye.
Well, I like to be observant. I mean, I just caught out of the corner of my eye as we went around the corner. We were in shallow water, and I thought it might have been a bear, to be honest. And these Arctic reindeer are just climbing up there with impunity. Amazing.
But they got up so quickly. I mean, they just padded the way up. All they saw was food, single-minded, there's the focus, and up they went.
And seeing them going up this, what, about a 70-degree slope, unbelievable. I mean, you would have needed crampons and all the rest for a man to contemplate that climb.
The panorama of mountains, ice, and snow never ceases to amaze. There's so much to do and see that stopping periodically to anchor and explore is essential. This small cove was used by whalers. It's protected by a 1,500-foot mountain that begged to be climbed. Those reindeer inspired us.
I actually wondered who'd been there before us. I mean, down at the bay, we'd seen sort of remnants of human existence, but you know, those guys have been locked up in that little beach for years, and I wonder how many had actually wandered up the mountain the same way as we'd gone. And you've got to think to yourself, they must have had a bit of an uncomfortable climb. I mean, it was jagged rocks we were walking on. They were not for the barefooted or the faint-hearted, were they?
This is one of the reasons why we've sailed this far. To be able to look across and up the snow-capped mountains in the boat just down there in the bay, waiting for us to get back for a nice cup of tea. Yeah, Oystercatcher, we're a third of the way up the mountain now, and yeah, we're looking down on you. Can you see us?
Yes, I can see you now. You're in two pairs. Take care though, because the people above you may kick some shale down on you. They're right over ahead, about 50 to 80 feet above you. Over.
So you're out of the way.
Claire is over to the right of you.
Well, I'm more worried about not so much my slipping, but the people underneath getting hit by a rock, because that's obviously very dangerous. And there was a point there about halfway up where maybe we should have turned around if we'd been really sensible.
Where are you?
To your left, I think.
No, I thought, yeah, just left a little bit now, and then down that chimney, yeah.
I'd rather not look down.
Don't want to disturb the plant life here. Kind of fascinating how this stuff grows inside these rocks. So far, so good.
Whoa.
What a view. Looking out over this frozen polar landscape, I marvel at what a hostile environment this is, even when we're protected by the latest and high-tech materials, even when our vessel is so capable and comfortable. In the museums of Oslo, we have seen the clothing sailors wore in the 1600s, drawings of their ungainly boats and primitive navigation equipment, and we can't begin to understand how they managed to survive up here even in summer.
The crew of Oystercatcher continues its voyage up the west coast of Spitsbergen. Dogs have long enjoyed heroic status in the polar regions. They beat the aviators to the North Pole, and they still provide excellent transportation.
Okay, so I just take this and hook it on here to the harness.
Just try to keep on good distance to the team in front, about 5 meters.
So I stand on here, stand one like this, right?
Yeah.
That's the brake, I drive that down.
Yeah. Make the dog stop, so you go, whoa.
Dog stop, you say, whoa.
Yeah.
And then to hold on, you just kind of hold on for dear life.
Yeah.
Okay, does it tip over?
It happens.
It happens, but not too much.
No.
Tonight?
I hope not.
Good, we hope not either.
In the shadow of large radar dishes aimed at the heavens, Gary and Jack begin their maiden voyage, following in the track of a veteran sledder.
Come on, guys. Here we go.
How's it feel down there, Jack?
Well, it's okay until we get to the rocks.
So you're feeling the rocks hit your butt?
You betcha.
The snow is soft, but the dogs love it anyway. They are born and bred to run.
On you, Husky.
I'm glad we're doing this on such a nice day. It's hard to imagine driving this sled through the polar night in a blizzard.
Coming up over the ridge here. And it's 9:30 at night. This is looking good the way we're doing it.
Hey, let's go. You know, this thing could tip.
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
No sooner said than done.
I'm coming.
Go on, hand on the sled.
Hold on, coming.
Sit.
Stop.
Where's Garrett?
Oh my God. How are you doing?
Just always definitely too deep.
It's not the first time I've capsized, nor will it be the last.
Okay.
Here and there in the fjords of Spitsbergen, one finds small rock pile islands where birds flock in the summer to raise broods. This one is inhabited by eider ducks. Even these locals have trouble with the footing. The rock islands are magical places where bird communities go about their business without interruption. In keeping with tradition, the couples tend their downy nests, while the bachelors hang out at the harbor.
The further north we go, the more isolated all of us feel. Despite the comforts we have on board, we are overcome by the immensity of the polar environment.
Well, it's fantastic. The end of the glacier over there has the most peculiar shapes in it. And then a little bit further round, there's actually some blood on the beach, which I think might be from the kill from a polar bear, because there's some tracks leading away. But I've never seen anywhere quite so bleak.
That's what it's all about. This is the most desolate place I've ever been. There are no people, there are no signs of civilization almost. And you're off on your own, literally, when you're up here.
There's much ado about polar bears here in Spitsbergen. After all, there's twice as many bears as there are people. These things, Danette, are big, but they're ferocious.
And they're very fast. A bear can actually swim faster than a man can row, and they can run at up to about 40 miles an hour, but only for a limited distance of about 200 yards.
Bears are on our minds constantly when we're ashore. It's Roger's turn with the gun, and we stick close as we examine a ruined trapper's shack.
Trying to figure the date out here.
Got some cartoons in color.
Wow, look at this. What a view.
So you had room for your stove, a place to cook.
I mean, you compare, what they had to what we had. I mean, on the food front, we could go for months, very healthily. And they're living out of a can, eating pemmican and chewing scurvy grass to keep the scurvy away.
I mean, it must be, brutal, really, to have to live ashore and to be snowed under for many months of the year.
So we have procured this rifle. It's a Springfield 30-06, well used, and it's sufficient to do the job if necessary to scare a bear. Ready? Yep. That was short. High and right. I try to think like a polar bear and try to outguess him. I don't know if you can, but a polar bear is a very ominous beast. He's carnivorous, he's fast, he swims. You should never, never underestimate a polar bear.
7 a.m., what good luck to find two polar bears on the ice at the foot of this glacier looking for food.
First of all, I heard some crunching at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I just heard a noise that didn't fit. And it sounded actually like a kind of growl. And I just couldn't believe my eyes. Less than 100 yards away, there were two bears as large as life. Absolutely incredible.
And great luck. There may be 2,500 bears up here, but they keep a low profile. One of them swims across the fjord to the ice shelf in front of the glacier snout. The other walked around and stood sniffing the air. If they look like totally relaxed bears, it's because they have no natural enemies, and man hasn't been allowed to shoot them for sport for 25 years. How easily this bear snags a fish. They are great athletes with amazing agility for their 1,200 pounds. Here's the swimmer.
I mean, they were sort of loping along and then suddenly switched into top gear, and they would be frightening.
Normally, the polar bear will find you. You're not the one that find the polar bear. I was attacked by a polar bear once. He started to run towards me when he had a distance of approximately 30 meters. And then he actually exploded. I had a flare gun in one hand, a rifle in the opposite hand, and a 44 Magnum on my hip. And I had only 1/10 of a second, used the flare gun, and aimed right through towards the polar bear, and hit the gravel in front of him, and that stopped the bear. If not, 1/10 of a second later, he would have been on top of me. The polar bear can run in the speed about 60 kilometers per hour, but only, of course, in a short distance. That's fast.
Because there will be visitors in Lower Spitsbergen during the summer months, teams of environmental police are dispatched to keep an eye on things. Oystercatcher 24 has a visit from Park Ranger Jan Jensen and policeman Hans Gukstad.
Tell me, what is your mission out here in the wilderness?
We are representing the governor of Svalbard, and we have to look after the tourists because of the special regulations in these areas.
Have you seen any polar bears yet?
No, I haven't seen one so far, but I guess we will see polar bears when we get further north.
How do you get used to this weather?
It's nice. It's no problem to explore this area and this wilderness. It's very nice.
Well, I appreciate the stalwart Norwegian. The people that come up here and live here are of a different breed, I think. We met the park ranger and the policeman this morning, and they are up here only for 2 months out of the year, and they relish it.
It's easy to see why. We've had some blustery gray days and a gale or two, but mainly the weather has blessed us. We've had some cold days that sent us scurrying below for more fleece, but temperatures in the mid-40s are crisp, bracing, acceptable. The air doesn't get any cleaner, and we're sailing, one of the best possible ways to explore.
One of Arne's specialties is glacier climbing. The snout was too soft for his liking this day, so he selected an ice ledge to one side that passed his close inspection. After strapping on his own crampons, he got Gary harnessed for a rappel down the face of the ledge.
Luckily for me, Arne is tying a good knot here. What do you call that knot?
Figure 8 knot.
Simple figure 8.
It's cold in the air now, and the ground is also frozen. The ground is deep frozen, 300-400 meters deep down in the ground. Only the top half meter is melting every summer.
When you get up here on the ridge, you can hear the ice melting here on the surface. But it's pretty hard underneath. A little colder too.
The glacier's main snout is behind Gary. Arne installs ice screws to belay the climbers.
Your hands get cold, Arne?
No, it's not too bad. It's summer in the Arctic now, so we have a few plus degrees, at least 4 degrees today, so it's not too bad.
Feels good. Now time to rappel. This will be the exciting part. Arne heaves down the line I'll use to rappel. It's a little unnatural going off backwards off the cliff here. But anyway, Arne's got a safety harness on me, and then I'll rappel and go backwards. So here I go. See you later. Feels pretty good. One crampon has come off. See how these Gore-Tex boots do now. One crampon on, one crampon off. Feel quite a bit of stretch in the line as it comes down. Well, that felt pretty good. I even lost one of my crampons here along the way. It wasn't totally vertical, it was a little bit of a slope to it. And with the safety harness, it felt pretty good. Being able to sail these waters makes all the difference. Sailing puts us in sync with the elements. The measured pace enables us to take in all the gorgeous vistas, to be at one with the birds and spot animals ashore. All the time we're keeping our goal uppermost in mind, 80 degrees north. We watch the weather constantly for opportunities to advance.
Well, the weather is starting to change on us here a little bit. The wind is shifting around to the north and is blowing right across this ice field behind us. So the wind is picking up and the temperature is going down.
Gary and Richard confer over the chart, discussing strategies for maximum gain.
1 a.m. as we continue our cruise. Moments ago, it was beautiful out here, 50 degrees, the sun was shining, And just in the last 5 minutes, this cloud level has come over. The temperature has dropped 20 degrees. It's freezing.
It's been a bit of a surprise. I mean, the sheer power of nature in this whole area has certainly taken me by surprise. Just like the flash of a gun and it's changed. You see the clouds piling in, 10 minutes later you've got 30, 40 knots of wind. So you've got to really keep an eye open.
The boat's absolutely fine and she's everything that we hoped she would be. Above all, she's very comfortable in this cold environment.
Oysters are large volume boats built strong and comfortable and with lots of amenities. And they perform. Our crew can attest to that.
Well, our philosophy on the saloon is we don't like to consider the saloon as part of the sleeping accommodation. We've tried to split the boat into separate accommodations according to most people's requirements. But we start with an owner's stateroom, which includes a double queen-size berth, which is very comfortable. We have a self-contained stall shower and heads there. Coming forward, we have the engine room under the cockpit floor, 250 horse Perkins engine, which is both turbocharged and intercooled, so we can drive the boat at over 10 knots flat out, but it gives very efficient motor sailing capability as well, very fuel efficient. And on the port side, we have a walk-through galley, which has counter space on both sides. And then going forward of the saloon, we have a very nice guest, what we call a VIP double guest cabin. So at a squeeze, we can actually sleep 10 people, but 8 is a very comfortable number, and that's the number we've got aboard for this trip. Well, we have a very complete nav station on this boat. Equipment has got a lot more compact in recent years, and this boat actually has 4 telephone systems to start with. Sat-C, which is a voice system, Sat-M, which is text. They will have a global capability and will work anywhere in the world except here in the Arctic when we're between mountains. We also have a single sideband radio, 25 watts. That has a range, a transatlantic range in the right conditions. We can also get weather bulletins through a WeatherFact system. We have a radar machine here. The radar has zone guard, so we can set that at sea depending on 5-10 miles range. So if anything comes inside that range, an alarm will sound, which is a very useful aid to watch keeping. But we also have a chart plotter. This one has a global capability. It contains the equivalent of something like 6,000 paper charts, and we can literally go around the world without having to change a thing. But we don't forget the old skills, Gary. We still need to keep an eye on the compass, we still need to have paper charts, and we still need to maintain conventional watch keeping, just like the old sailors.
Everything about the Oyster is sturdy, proper. There's considerable luxury on board, but this boat is built for going to sea. Some of our favorite moments on the way to 80 degrees north have been encounters with seals. There are a ton of seals in the Arctic, and all of them remind us of people we know. These two are ring seals with their small heads and teardrop bodies. Here's a bearded seal, close up. Seals don't stray far from their ice holes. You wouldn't either if your neighbors were polar bears. One of the seal's favorite haunts is close to a glacier snout. Good hunting there. Good hunting for the bears, too. Sorry, didn't mean to frighten you. Seals are curious animals, but in the end, they play it safe. Up here, they'll live longer that way. Speaking of seals, many nights while at anchor in the fjord, we drifted off to sleep to the mournful song of the ringed seal coming through the hole. It sounded like a soprano singing in the shower, a sustained descending note. The bow wave, the birds chattering in the early morning, and at times the riveting silence of this frozen land are equally poignant memories on the way to 80 degrees north.
It's not very scenic, but it is home to over 1,100 people. It was founded at the turn of the last century by an American, John Longyear. His purpose of being here was mining, and that coal mining continues today. The other industry that's popular is tourism. In the summer, 24-hour daylight, temperature a brisk 45 degrees right now, but in the winter, think about this, it's 24 hours of darkness and it never gets above 0 degrees.
Coal put Spitsbergen on the map. This is mine number 4 in Longyearbyen, now idle. Further north in the tiny town of Ny-Ålesund, mining began 10 years after Longyearbyen.
It started in 1916 when the Kings Bay Coal Company opened their first mine here. This train here is a relic of that mining operation. The mine lasted 20 years, then there was a devastating explosion that killed 21 miners.
In 1906, mining was ridiculously difficult. After drilling by hand, coal was shoveled into carts drawn by horses. The 1940s saw the arrival of American mining technology. Gary and Jack are ready to follow Arne Kristoffersen into mine number 4.
And this is the door into the mine. So now we're actually entering the mountain.
What's this curtain for?
This is actually to stop the moisture to go into the mine. Because you see, inside is cold, outside warm, because now we're inside the permafrost layer. And the temperature inside the mine is -4 degrees all year round, summer and winter.
This is in centigrade, and it's just below 0, or about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. We use Fahrenheit in the United States. But it gets colder than this.
It gets colder than this. We will have -degrees in the end of our tour inside.
Well, it's definitely getting a little colder. We're pretty deep in now.
Yes.
What do we have here?
Here we have the main coal seam. We have many layers of coal on top and also many layers above, but this one is the main coal seam.
Now this coal was vegetation at one point that grew and died and it got mushed in. How many years of vegetation are we talking about?
That layer, to be honest, I'm not sure how many million years, but we are talking about many years. So here you have 1 meter of coal, and this has been 10 meters of turf.
A 10-to-1 ratio.
That's correct.
Well, that's pretty soft stuff.
Yes, the outer layer is very soft, but that's due to the pressure of the mountain. This is the gravel in the bottom of the river, and on top, the water was flowing some million years ago. Here in the roof, you can see actually wave marks. These are wave marks because you're now standing in the beach zone on this big lake. A big river was flowing right across this tunnel.
From the main tunnel, Arne leads Gary into a 40-inch high working shaft.
Oh, this will be a lot of fun.
And this drill should be parallel to the roof, 5 to 10 centimeters below the hard rock.
My God, it's heavy.
And now you're going to make hole with approximately distance of 1 meter to 1.5 meters between every hole.
Shifts with the 50-pound drill lasted 8 hours. After shafts were mined out, they were braced with stacks of oak 4x4s to allow the mountain to settle gradually. The oak stacks have been compressed like sticks of butter. Mining coal just 600 miles from the North Pole.
Vergohamna is located on Dansk Island, near the northwest corner of Svalbard. Vergohamna fascinates the team. It's nothing special, just a small cove nestled between mountains. But this remote, inaccessible place has been such an important center of activity throughout history that Norway has declared it a national park. Beachcombing here is worthwhile. Artifacts can still be found beneath the rock field. Nearly 300 years before the balloonists arrived, Dutch whaling ships used Vergohamna as a base.
Hey Gary, look at this. The rock, as I picked it up, just split. And all the layers just came apart.
What do we got here? Look at that, it's growing. These are alive, right here in the shale rocks.
In the middle of all this waste, and this is in full bloom. And there's some orangey lichen here.
You got the lichen, the flower, and then the moss seems to be alive too.
There's a really bright patch there as well.
You know, you come here and you think it's just a simple beach. Then you start looking around, you got plant life, flowers, these different kind of rocks, water here, the ice, the snow, the beach, birds, evidence of people being here before. And then of course you got to think about the polar bear.
Whaling was one of the first industries that was here in Spitsbergen, and the Dutch were the leading nation in whaling at this time. And in 1635, they established a plant here to process the blubber.
Where I'm sitting here is where the old blubber ovens used to be, and they used to bring the whales in and produce 100 barrels of oil for every whale.
Well, they had a tough time of it, particularly the whalers who got here in the late 1600s. A lot of them are still buried up here. That was a tough life, very tough. But they were after the oil from the whales, and apparently it was a productive part of their life. but they ran out of whales and then they ran out of their own time.
In the early 1600s, 12 whalers who missed their ship home were first to winter on Spitsbergen. They chewed on leather belts and ate disgusting blubber fritters to survive. If those old whalers could board Oystercatcher 24, they would think they were among space aliens, crossing 80 degrees north after this. Welcome back to 80 degrees north under sail.
Contemplating adventure brings up words like excitement, risk, and daring. In today's world, safety is always factored in and makes all of us happy. But in a remote area like Svalbard, we come face to face with a time when adventurers threw caution to the winds, literally, like the balloonist of Virgo Hamna.
The map shows how close Virgo Hamna is to the North Pole. The location made sense for launching flights to the pole.
It was the vessels that made no sense. The only way to steer this balloon was by dragging a tether, not terribly efficient. The old launch site at Virgo Hamna is rich in relics, like this old pitchfork. The mountains are as forbidding as ever. The Oystercatcher crew lands to investigate.
Well, during the time that the balloon expeditions to the North Pole were taking place, Virgo Hammer here was as famous in it today as Cape Canaveral is today. This pile of rocks represents one of the anchorages for the balloon hangar, which was sited right over here, and it was big enough to hold a big balloon.
What we've got behind us here is the gas production plant for the hydrogen gas. They made about 500,000 cubic meters of gas a year for their various airship ventures, and there's some iron filings on the ground here. They mixed this with sulfuric acid and seawater to make hydrogen. This would have been a really dangerous place.
This was Norge, the airship that finally overflew the pole in 1926. The earlier ships failed.
Airships were invented in 1898, and 8 years later, an American journalist called Wellman came out here, built a hangar. These are the remains of his fuel tanks, and he had, in fact, 5 attempts at getting across the North Pole from here, but wasn't successful in any of them.
Well, the most famous of them was in 1926, where Raoul Evanson left in the airship Norge and flew right over the North Pole from this very spot. Behind me you can see the anchor mast, which is still standing, where they used to tether the dirigibles.
He set off and flew over the North Pole in the dirigible with an American, Lincoln Ellsworth. Just 3 days later they arrived in Alaska. That's 3,000 miles from here.
When you consider the equipment, it's no wonder so many pilots died. It's a great testament to Amundsen's ability and will that he succeeded in the face of such obstacles.
And I thought, my God, even flying a modern balloon with modern altitude equipment, position finding, radio, rescue, proper clothing, even then you'd have to be certifiably insane to want to try it. And to do it in those days, my God, those guys were either terribly brave or terribly naive, I'm not sure which.
At the turn of last century, Virgo Hammer was a site of all kinds of activity of people trying to reach the North Pole. After being pinned down here by the weather, it's become our base camp. Next for us, a little bit more modest attempt to reach 80 degrees north.
Just as Virgo Hamna was a launch pad for the North Pole, it has become the final stop for the team before making a run for 80 degrees north.
We're heading toward Moffin Island, about 80 miles away. At this speed, we'll be there in 9 or 10 hours.
Once again, the team enjoys a strong breeze from astern. They must clear the northwest tip of Svalbard, then turn east, crossing the 80-degree meridian on the way to Moffin Island. Moffin Island is the last bit of land in this area, south of the North Pole. As they round the corner, the wind evaporates to nothing. Under power, they slip across a glassy sea, watching the GPS advance, slowly but surely, to 80 degrees.
80 degrees north. We are now just 600 miles from the North Pole, and it's our great fortune to get here in such fine weather.
Taking advantage of weather windows is why the team made it. That and the good luck of having the ice pack recede. Up ahead, Moffin Island and hundreds of walruses.
It's hard to imagine so many walruses. Seeing them in their natural habitat is worth the trip. Moffin is a preserve that hosts 20% of the world's walrus population in the summer, and they're a hoot.
snorting and flopping around like a bunch of sumo wrestlers. Walruses are the largest members of the seal family.
Their little noses in the air, the little whiskers, which are almost like handlebars, like sort of, I don't know, like airmen of the past, where they're all looking at us and they were so inquisitive. They want to know who we were.
Oh, I had no idea that walruses were the size they are. You know, these guys weigh 2 tons, and these things are just huge. And suddenly you see them in the water next to the boat. You realise that you're looking at 10 tons of walrus. They're incredible.
But they were definitely very curious about the boat and not in the least bit worried by it. And it was almost as if they had a sort of guard of honour, if you like, who came out to see what was happening and just keep an eye on us.
There is a total lack of pollution, as far as I can tell, from mankind up here. Most of them are long gone, and they left it in a pretty pristine condition.
And amazed to think that we were only a 3-day sail away from the North Pole, if we could get that far.
The 24-hour daylight, being surrounded by these icy mountain peaks, sailing around the glacier, which is taller than our mast. The sighting of the bear is something I'm never going to forget.
This is the land of the strong. I mean, the polar bears, the walruses, and the reindeer trudging up the mountains. I mean, you really have to be strong to exist here, and in a way, we're kind of the weakest links.
Svalbard is the land of the strong. We leave this frozen polar region inspired by what we have learned of those who came before us, and by those creatures who live in this remote world of ice amid the extremes of total darkness or relentless summer sun, where the polar bear is king.
This has been an exclusive presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to ESPN.com.
The wind that blows, the ship that goes, the lass that loves a sailor, the Queen, God bless her.